welcome to the 2026 Partner Ecosystems Expo. I'm your MC for the day. I'm Chad Atwell with Candor IQ. We're an enthusiastic member of HRTA, and also we provide compensation, workforce planning, and AI-enabled modeling in this space. So we're definitely interested in partnerships. I lead both partnerships and customer success for our rather small, nimble startup. So appreciate the time to introduce ourselves today and also to network and get to know a few more of the members here as well. We've got a great session coming up from Harbinger. I want to thank both Harbinger and Intro for being sponsors of today's event. With that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Shrikant Subodh.
Thanks, Chad, for getting us started. My name is Shrikant Pattathil. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and President here at Harbinger Group. Been here for more than 2 decades now. My specific focus is to help our technology as well as our sales teams take our service offerings, which is predominantly how to help organizations in their talent transformations, workforce enablement, as well as digital learning initiatives. From a technology standpoint, how to bring about that transformation within their organizations, whether they are building products or whether they're implementing solutions. So Harbinger plays in that space, and my role is to work with our team to build some of these solutions and help customers see how they can benefit from doing these transformations. So looking forward to this conversation, which is around AI.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you, Ward, for hosting this session. My name is Subodh Bhide. I work as the technology solutioning head at Harbinger. I'm also heading the HCM practice that Harbinger specializes in. My primary focus when I'm talking with customers is to help them decipher the whole maze that is created of hype and get to the real solution that they need for their business requirements. That's what my proposal and solutioning team we do. So this session on AI and labeling, it's coming in at the right time because for the past year or so, and possibly for the next year, AI is going to be hyped quite a lot. So what are some of the very grounded decisions one can make? What are some of the frameworks for doing that? I hope we can answer some of the questions that are there around those in today's sessions. It will help customers understand the whole life cycle in a better way.
Very nice. I'm going to be the moderator today. I'm Ward Christman, co-founder of HR Tech Alliances, that's hosting this event today. We're thrilled to have Harbinger Group back. They are the HR tech builders of choice in the industry. And after 30 some years of proving it, it doesn't get much better than that. So nice job, guys. Keep up the good work. We're certainly excited to dive into the topic, the ROI of code development. The world of development, I don't know how it's going to go much faster than it is now with all the AI stuff coming out. There's a lot of interesting stuff to dig into. And at the end of the day is how is the end customer, usually the HR department and the employees and applicants, all the people involved in the HR and HR technology, the use of those tools and the content that goes with it. How is the ROI going to come out of all this? If there's no ROI, it's tough to justify to get the budget to do these great things that are happening or that people want to do. With that in mind, we're going to dive into a couple of the questions. And one of the first thing in terms of the product owners at the HR tech vendors themselves, they love to build stuff in-house. They want to have that sense of accomplishment. But the question is, do they need full control to still get the end result? Remember the customer, that ROI, how's that going to work? I'll put this question to you, Shrikant, and Subodh, you're welcome to hop in then afterwards. You look at the costs and the business case. If you're going to co-develop and collaborate with a group like Harbinger, for example, on building something for your customers on your roadmap, what's that look like as time moves on, whether you built it or you partner with a group and co-develop it?
It's an interesting question, and I feel whenever we are pitching for our services, we sense that the software technology team who's building their solutions always thinks that they need to own everything or they need to build everything. That's when it comes out. Even if I were in their shoes, I would think that way because inherently with engineers, that's how it goes. The product is one aspect of your solution and what you're building and what your vision is and stuff like that. But when you're trying to give end customers a value, there are many other peripheral things that comes with it. Sometimes it is integration, sometimes it is implementation, sometimes it is data migration. All these have to be built as product features into your product. You cannot think about it after you've built it or when you're trying to sell it. So you have to think about it in advance. We have seen that in most cases, these things are undercooked at times. They'll say, oh, once the customer comes, we will try to build it. And that's because inherently the product team focuses on the core and the peripherals probably get ignored. I usually say to customers who are evaluating us, you can do the core and do the peripherals with us to start with. You don't have to give us the core work, but you will see a lot of advantage in somebody who has domain experience as well as technical know-how to work alongside team, because your acceleration is going to be much faster. And when you land a customer or set of customers, your ability to scale is going to be much better than the competition. So I think that's how the collaboration works. Of course, if you undercook some of these things and build it over 1 or 2 years, you have to redo it. But if you do it with a specialist partner, they probably have put in place the things in such a manner it will save you some dollars and time and money and help you sustain a longer roadmap for whatever you invested in. But I do understand that it's a hard decision for many technology companies to make. But I think if they choose the right partner, they have that catalyst effect when it comes to growth, when they land opportunities or want to scale.
Yeah, that really hits the nail on the head in terms of having that external team that can scale. And part of what the cost factor is, which was core to the question, is how does that compare when you're making that decision? If you're a North American company and you're trying to hire top developers here, the cost is going to be a big, big difference. And your budget's going to be your number one cost, right? So how do you scale that? And they want vacations and different things that are totally reasonable from an ROI standpoint. At least in North America, we just had the NFL draft for football, and you're building a team, right? So that's great. You have a team today, but what happens when somebody quits or they get sick or they're not available? It's not just about the product roadmap. I think there's inherent cost in just trying to build a team and knowing you have the right qualifications, which co-developing with a group like Harbinger, of course, you have a whole huge bench of people that you can pull from when needed to keep things moving. And that I think is often forgotten. Let's take a jump into some of the agentic AI stuff, if you will. When it comes to agentic AI and the skills first type of features that a lot of companies have been building to or trying to or thinking about it, what does that mean? And if you're looking to build it internally or even co-development versus, let's say, a white label, maybe white labeling something that's already out there, how does that compare from a traditional HCM module, particularly the bigger ones like payroll or benefits or something? What's the dynamics there when you white label the payroll system, but now you're like, okay, we want to own something. What are the options there for typical HR tech vendor?
The way we are trying to reframe this is these are two fundamentally different set of solutions that one is trying to build. The traditional HCA modules, it could be payroll, it could be time and attendance, it could even be a learning management system, the traditional ones. These solutions have been around for decades. The rules are well documented, the compliance requirements are known, the edge cases are known, and the whole thing is very predictable. So whether you try to build something in-house, whether you white label something, you're essentially onboarding an entire solution. The outcomes are known, it's very predictable, it's extremely low risk. There's low risk of something going wrong because the solution is known and it's manageable if something goes wrong. But when you switch to the agentic AI side of it, it's like the exact opposite of it. Primarily because the whole field is still evolving. There are like new LLMs that are coming up almost every week. There are newer versions coming of it. There is Claude that is trying to disrupt the whole party with some of their own agents that they're bringing on. And at a broad level, there is no consensus about organizations, how technology builders are going to use skills. There are no specifications for skills and ontologies or how agents are going to move across systems, use information from an LMS, from an HRIS, from a productivity system. Ultimately, the ownership of skills is still being debated. So whether it's the responsibility of a talent management system, whether it's an HRIS responsibility, some LMS providers think that they might end up owning the whole skills ontologies. So the whole thing is in some kind of a churn. This is going to take time to settle down. But one have to keep in mind that unlike payroll, there are not going to be any specifications. There are not going to be any rules how systems need to be built. Primarily, when a technology provider is trying to do something around the agentic AI part, for example, they have to keep in mind two things. If they go with a partner, they're essentially relying on the partner's capabilities and their investments in something that's unpredictable and evolving. They would rely on the partner to make certain bets and at the end of it, get benefits out of it. The second part of it is if they try to build something in-house, they're going to be locked in one particular path. If they make certain assumptions, then pivoting from those could become difficult. Adding to what Shrikant said, it could add substantial tech debt into the whole equation. They might find it more difficult than a partner whose business might be built on top of skills. White labeling could be a wiser solution. But at the end of it, one has to figure out where the niche lies, where the time to market is going to be more important.
Yeah, I love what you just mentioned there too. And I was thinking about skills like taxonomy. There's a number of companies that offer that. And if you're not in the business of creating the content, how are you going to get the content? The same thing, right? You compare that to like payroll. It's like, well, you stand up a new payroll system. If you have an old one, you're going to migrate data. Somebody's going to help with that. How many times does that get forgotten? So you look at agentic AI, the same issues are there. But to your point, I love that it's a different approach. It's the opposite, really, right? I don't anybody's white labeling agents anymore unless it's Claude or something and you're just saying, hey, it's mine. But who builds it, right? In HR tech, I don't know anybody building their own LLMs or whatnot. So why would you try to build agentic components if somebody else can do it? And I'd probably more up to speed on what that is. So having that external group for thought leadership and pragmatic market awareness is huge. You get your company to run and all the core platforms already there. So yeah, great points.
I like what Subodh has said that certain core modules, when it comes to HR, they're pretty independent and they probably don't need too much white labeling and stuff like that. But things that are around talent management, around recruitment, which combines a lot of solutions, and therefore there are a lot of complex workflows, a lot of different ways of doing things. There may be opportunities to white label more and partner more because you cannot inherently create all of those in your product. If you are in the AI space beta testing some of those, you don't want to build everything because you don't know whether the market exists as well. The whole way of doing things with a skills-based approach, the whole talent management from that. In those kind of situations where it's like a little bit more broader and open-ended, you're not too sure to bet all the money on it, then it makes more sense. That's where the whole partnership and the white labeling is so attractive. The main challenge is how many barriers you put and how complex you make it. Most of the times, what we have seen is the intent to white label is there, but the whole thing is so complicated that by the time it happens, it takes like months or years. Hopefully, with the whole AI way of doing things, it may be more conducive or easier.
Let's hope so, at least for like connectors and whatnot. But at the same time, if you're getting some of these connectors from other parties and they get acquired, or you need to change something that they won't change, if you either build it yourself or you have a white label partner and it makes sense for what the market is asking for, you have a lot more options. Certainly when you co-develop it, I think even more options because eventually you're going to want to get acquired. And if all your connectors are with Workday and you want to get acquired by SAP, what do? They're not going to find you very appetizing. But if you own the tech or white label, at least that's more plug and play. Let's look at another question here around HR workflows and how AI agents are transforming that. Companies like ServiceNow and WalkMe and others have done a lot around the user interface to workflows, but whether it be underneath the UI layer or part of it, how do agents help do that? If you look at the messy legacy data, either migrating that and this new interface now has to figure that out or deal with it. What are some of the issues for cleaning it, mapping it, and validating it? Let's call this data migration or data creation or content creation, learning skills and all that stuff. How can people plan for that without underestimating the challenge to build agents around that?
We had a couple of examples where we actually built agents for some of our customers who were accumulated data for years. And when we started doing the implementation, the customization of some of these agentic frameworks, what we realized is that the data wasn't at one place. Forget about it being in a similar format, but it was spread across 4 to 5 different systems. Now, the whole agentic project was set on the side. It became a major project to get the data together so that the agents could make any sense out of it. So it's looking up whether it defeated the purpose of having the agents. The whole agentic approach would thrive on data. It can understand data that's in a raw format, but there are chances that it will end up going wrong if the data is extremely disconnected, if it's not readable for the agent. It's going to end up giving wrong recommendations. It's going to end up giving you incorrect workflows and so on. Very quickly, it became like a three-party problem, whether the agentic provider or the AI provider was to solve the problem, whether it was Harbinger who would solve the problem, whether the customer was bringing these 4 systems, whether they were going to solve the problem. Eventually, we figured out a way, but that led us to learning something very new where a good data warehouse or a good data lake created up front, it's going to be a key success for some of the AI projects that one would undertake. That would be a very crucial thing. And this is going to be particularly important because, again, going back to some of the traditional systems that existed, they know how to exchange data between 2 systems. Data migration is not big there. But with agentic, if the expectation is that the agent or the AI model is now going to figure out or draw inferences across multiple data points, those data points need to be readable to that particular model. So that's where a messy or a blurry data ecosystem could reduce the effectiveness of an agentic solution. So that's what my take is on that part.
So you'd recommend perhaps spending a little more time upfront planning what that migration might look like before you even start building any kind of agents to support it once it's there, right?
Yeah, because the whole agentic AI, it's like the big shiny object. No one really understands that the shine is going to fade away if the data doesn't exist. So one needs to be wary that they need the data for it to work.
Yeah, good point. Especially if you have it and you need to get it into the new shiny object. That's a challenge. Shrikant, anything on that?
No, I think I agree with Subodh since he's actually worked on those projects. The main thing is most people work with AI, they create the ecosystems, the workflows, and that's what we say that, okay, it's ready for production. But when they go to an enterprise and they suddenly see the kinds of information and data that is coming in now, they were not prepared for that. So somebody has to then clean it, make it better, change it. So it seems like for all your questions, we seem to be the solution. That said, I think what platforms and enterprises need to do is they need to understand that this connection needs to be made and this transformation needs to be made. In most cases, it's not going to be the turning off of a switch. It will require some engineering and some creativity around it. Then if all these things work correctly, it's like assembling a Lego block. That's when it comes out right. Otherwise, it'll break in terms of if it doesn't fix things properly, it will not work. A few steps it takes out of production. You will see this thing about data mapping, getting all these things right. Somebody has to do that job. There's a lot of time needed for that. There's a lot of effort, planning, and thinking needed for that. So you need to give it that space and thought.
What I hear from most companies is their biggest complaint with these HR platforms when they install them is you've got somebody who built the tech, you've got installation experts, and then they leave, and then it's the company that has to make it work. And if the tech's working great, but the data didn't come over properly, that may not have been noticed until the very end. And then the project either continues on and gets much more expensive than their plan, or there's a lot of pain and suffering as the people try to work with what they have until they're able to finish the migration or re-migrate. Probably a year ago, we had a panel and we heard that big pain point. So yeah, you hit a lot of good points around that. And the planning and having somebody help up front, whether it be building the product or building the plan and then doing the migration, you hand it off to somebody that wasn't familiar with building the product, all of a sudden they may not understand it enough. But that actually ties into the next question, which is pretty fun to contemplate. What should be either white labeled or co-developed? Is it bigger projects or smaller? Everything under the agentic or AI type stuff can be big, but it seems to be very specialized. What do you recommend be built in a co-development or white label environment compared to traditional offerings?
We need to look at the product and the solution to probably see how the white labeling should be done. Sometimes it's a build versus buy decision, right? So why do you go for white labeling is you want to go to market faster, you want to test something and then build something. So probably it's a validation question. And the future, what we think is, and that's what we have been also talking to some of these software vendors, is that at least in the next 2 or 3 years, in the HR or other domains also, there will be a consolidation of all the products. Because if you're just a very niche platform doing interviews, for example, today with AI, any other platform can build that feature very fast. So you probably want to be as broad a player as you can so that you're not just workflows or creating automations within your platform, but across the board. It solves many problems. And therefore, it gives you that stickiness with customers so that 6 months later, the ATS is not turning around saying that now we have interview. Why are you going and spending money on a specialized interviewing platform? Because AI helps build things so fast. I feel the smaller player or the mid-sized players wanting to more white label and become more like a platform solution, that may be a faster approach in the short term. Even with AI, though they want to build it, but building and maintaining is a bigger challenge. So the white labeling approach can be a good way to extend your capabilities and have stickiness with your customers. That's what we think, but it may differ from product to product. If you are a recruitment product, if you're a talent management product, if you're a learning product, if you're a benefits product, as to what kind of white labeling things that you would benefit.
Yeah, that makes sense. But of course, the typical consultant answer is it depends. But it's so true. Everybody's got a unique situation. Their budgets are different, where they're at in their market maturity, their product maturity. Nobody can keep up with their product roadmap. I knew that. So if it's a big bite or even a small one, to your point, that maintenance too, and that's what people forget about. A lot of us grew up in the age of you install software and then you use Microsoft Office for 4 or 5 years and then maybe you upgrade it. But now things are upgraded daily. It's crazy. And what happens when they change the interface or the API or whatever the technology is that's keeping these things talking to each other? It's about anything on that?
Yeah, just one point to add to that. Many times customers have this requirement of lightning speed, time to market. That's where some of these are made in a hurry. And it's going to be something where you are reducing value of your product, whether you're improving value of a product as a trade-off for time to market. So it's a consulting answer, but it's going to revolve between 3 or 4 such points that the decision has to be made.
Yeah, very true. Shrikant, this one's for you. Companies use white labeling often as a stepping stone, get the product faster and help validate the market. Maybe it's not really what they should have been working on. And then they build it in-house, and that can certainly provide an easier way to at least look at the ROI for not only the vendor, but also their customers, right? Because they can get their customers something maybe faster than if they built it themselves. So what's the framework look like to go through that decision to build buyer partner? And if you could give us a little recipe for success, what are the key drivers that should be considered when you're doing that build versus white label buy?
I will go back to my earlier answer in terms of as you extend from a product, why do you want to white label or why do you want to OEM something? Not an inherent product capability and you're not too sure it should be your core feature and you're beta testing it in the market and it doesn't make sense for you to deviate your product team or your sales team to go in that direction. So you are saying that, okay, we'll add this capability, we'll present it to customers, and if it really clicks, then we will insource it or we'll change it at that point of time.
That clicking you mentioned really clicks. Where is that inflection point then? How do you know what you're looking for?
I would say from a revenue trajectory, if it hits almost 10% of your revenue or 20% of your revenue, assuming you're more than $1 million. And that usually used to be 30% or 40% in the non-AI world because building used to still cost a lot. But it may drop in the AI world because once the recurring revenue hits a 250K, half a million mark, for the OEM product solution, you may want to think that now this is having its own identity and legs. We should start building it because building it might take 3 to 6 months and you know what it takes, or acquiring that product or whatever might be the exit plan and the strategy. So I would say that decision point could be at 10% of your total ARR. If it's above $1 million, would be a good point for you to start thinking whether you want to now insource it. Anything lower than that, probably the cost, time, effort, everything involved may not justify it because you don't even have a core, something like $10,000-15,000, you're licensing it annually. Your whole process of just starting and getting it done could cost you a six-figure number. Then it doesn't make any sense. And also, when you're looking at an exit, 12 to 18 months before that is a good time for you to evaluate as to all the OEM solutions. Do you want to now integrate? You want to own them or you want to build them and change that dependency and stuff like that?
You're talking about a corporate valuation standpoint. You'll have a higher valuation if you own the technology, the IP, et cetera. Subodh, maybe you see this out there when people do choose to white label something initially and they're thinking at some point we're going to build it for either our valuation or just have more control, whatever it is they want. Does that seem to be 2-3 years down the road? Is that compressing more now with the rate of development change before they say, you know what, we're going to start building this now, and then we can cut over in 6 months or maybe 2 months, depending on how easy it is to replicate what you've been getting from a partner?
Yes, in a way. Primarily, it's reducing. And that's because the time to develop, the time to market, the time to validate is shrinking. So the faster a validation is done, it strengthens the decision whether to part away from a partner or to continue with them. Hence, you really need to know what the partner is bringing to the table, how are they going to perform, whether they're going to keep up the pace with the market changes that you are seeing. One external aspect that I want to add to what Shrik said is one needs to also look at the partner's development roadmap. So if there is a divergence that's going to happen between your product roadmap and what the partner is thinking, that's a clear sign that perhaps you need to think differently down the line because the partner is perhaps heading in a different market. They are heading in a different technology direction. You are heading in a different direction. So while you have a faster time to market, are you on board a partner that's not going to sustain you far in that particular journey? That's another way to look at it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if they're a good white label partner, they're going to be sharing the roadmap with you and you're going to be probably influencing it depending on how much of their revenue you're making up for them. So that all makes sense. To me, from a collaboration perspective, it would make sense to go with something already up and running if it's not core to your offering. Shrikant, thanks for sizing it up 10% or more. It makes sense to look at that from that perspective as well. It's always changing. That keeps it interesting. So from a governance standpoint, let's switch to some of that for a minute. If you look at whether it be the AI agents or even just traditional data hygiene and things like that, or even data migration, what's involved in compliance and also just speed to delivery? How can you be cognizant of all the AI governance that's out there? What's the framework look like for the governance of the AI and data type projects that people are working on?
So when we're talking with customers, there are like three themes that pan out when they present their problems. And the whole AI governance is a new topic that's hitting everyone, especially because all the regulatory bodies have woken up. There are like 7 states in the US that have their own AI frameworks that they are rolling out. I'm sure the federal would have something very soon. EU AI is going to come up in August. So there are going to be regulatory and compliances that are going to come from all sides. So the three themes that we are seeing evolve, the first one is to see how well are you contractually protected? Is it like staying at the standard data protection processing points, or is it now going beyond? So is it having responsibility towards the regulators, certain response times for some of the queries or the audits that might come up? That's an additional thing that one might need to look from a contractual perspective. The second aspect which we are seeing is the partner or the AI system that you have audit friendly? Does it give you the right kind of information? Does it have AI governance built into it? Because all these AI models, they are going to change, they are going to drift, new ones are going to come up. So something that was tested and audited today may not be very relevant 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line. So you need to re-audit it. So does the AI partner have continuous monitoring, continuous governance built into them? That's one thing considered. And the third one is the technology providers, they need to be transparent with their customers about the whole governance aspect that they are providing or their partners are providing. Some might think that, oh, it's a weakness if we are exposing all our cards and saying that we need an additional layer of governance. But in this uncertain time when AI is being turned and twisted in different directions, this can actually be a differentiator. Saying that you have a strong AI governance practice built around your product, that's a sense of relief. That's a sense of trust that someone would have in your overall product or service. So those are like the three themes that we usually end up talking when it comes to governance, when it comes to data migrations in and around regulatory bodies.
So I presume if Harbinger Group builds some AI products, you'll help them understand what the governance requirements are for that. Is it something you do? What if you don't build it? They just bought it. Do you do audits for them? Would you do audits for a customer? Just curious how you get involved in that specifically.
So we have partnered with some AI companies that are specifically focused on the very core of how these models work. So they are like concepts of teaming, red teaming, and whitelisting, blacklisting, looking at prompts that pass through it. So it's a whole different scheme of things when you actually try to build a specification on how something's to be tested. But at the top of it, there is an AI governance practice. There is an AI governance layer. There are checklists can be run against different products. Shrikant and his team, they are building this as an offering that we can help customers. Shrikant, you want to get some light on that?
I think you've articulated the need for governance. And what we believe is whether it's been an ISO in the past or whether it's been a SOC compliance or HIPAA compliance, the software team that is building it probably doesn't understand what it means to deploy a product that has all the governance capabilities built in. And customers also want saying that, okay, is the third party or a different software that has evaluated this? If you're writing your own evaluations and own governance, it only goes so far. Even if there are no rules and regulations at this point of time, that gives your product an additional leverage over a competitive product for the customers to buy, saying that, okay, this at least is claiming and showing me all the data and information. And like what said, we have our own platform as well as we're partnering with some AI companies which do these extensive governance, and we are helping our customers who are building AI features to test it around the various AI guardrails, which could be just best practices also. And plus, some are like the New York State law and something of that sort, so that customers can then be more confident of deploying these tools in their enterprises for their employees and so forth. Not fear they'll get sued because they didn't follow the process.
That sounds like a good thing to have. Let me just wrap up with one final question. Just looking back at the original topics that we advertised for the session related to data sovereignty and knowing the AI ethics, or where did the data come from, whether it's in an LLM that's being leveraged to manage this new AI offering that you're helping build. So you've got the ethics and data sovereignty. What should they be looking at or checking into in those areas to stay out of hot water, or at least to help their customers get a better product?
When you say data sovereignty, you mean who owns the data at the end of the day?
Right. Or even where did it come from? If you're migrating the data from something they already own, the customer, pretty straightforward. But if it's an AI bot that you built, where's it getting the data? Do they need to be concerned? Is there something that you could help them with in that area?
It's an interesting question from a data ownership perspective, especially in the age of AI, where everything is getting scraped and put into AI platforms. How data from an enterprise standpoint, if you look at it, whatever is out there in the public is there, but what enterprises use internally, the processes, the systems, their various ways of creating a value proposition for their end customers, that data will probably reside with the enterprise. Whether vendor is building a platform or we are building it, we probably need to make sure that there's different ways of handling this data as to how it is protected, how it is used only in a session and not thrown out there into the LLM for mass consumption. So around data sovereignty, how you manage it, there could be multiple levels built so that protection exists. So I think that part is going to get more and more complex because it was easier in the SaaS platform when there was a database and the sites behind it. But when you're using an LLM, which sits outside your system, that is interpreting things for you, and you have to pass information there to solve a problem or get a workflow executed. There is going to be multiple layers of authentications and data processing that will come in as the AI system matures. I think that's where the whole engineering depth as well as thought process will be needed. Some of the partner products, what they're doing for the enterprise so that they can build workflows seamlessly on top of it, would be necessary for the future as we scale.
Well said, and I think a great way to end a great session. My brain's kind of full. Thank you for sponsoring, and thanks for a great content session here today. The discussion was awesome.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the insights and just hearing under the hood operational topics and how this all works together. It was really great.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Ward.
A huge shout out to our 2,000 plus members, especially our founding and corporate members, for their continuing support of the HR Tech Alliance's community platform. It's our subscribing members who provide the primary funding that powers our community platform and empowers our mission.